Hey guys, it's Ashley Bratzel here. I thought today I'm going to use a ruler instead of crochet hook to talk about yarn weight. Now, normally when you buy it, at least here in Canada, when you buy a yarn thing, skein, ball, whatever you want to call them, they'll have these things and it tells you the yarn weight is, medium is pretty worsted weight, pretty common here. 4.5 millimeters or 5 millimeters or sometimes 5.5 millimeters hook. It's on the label. It's all good. But if you're like me, sometimes I buy things like this, and this is mill ends. And most of the time they come worsted weight. Sometimes you can even tell what brand it was, what colorway. Sometimes it's nothing. Mill ends means sometimes you got things like this. They can't sell that at full price because they have some sort of issue when they were winding it, or there's a splotch of color that shouldn't be there, that sort of thing. Sometimes it's because you get a ball, it looks like it's going to be a ball, but when you start opening it, it's like 50 different pieces. That doesn't happen to me very often, so I take my chance with the mill end bags because they're quite inexpensive. And a lot of them I have from a long time ago. So I've been trying to pick up my yarn usage now that I'm so professional. Now that I design patterns, I try to use more nicer companies, I suppose. I don't know. I try to use yarn that you could find, but I do have a lot of these mill ends and also scraps. I have scraps anyway. People gave me scraps and they come like this, and I don't know what it is. Usually I can guess if it feels acrylic versus like cotton. I can say, okay, I know the difference, but there's not a whole lot of information on there. What hook am I supposed to use? craftyarncouncil.com has a chart. That's a standard chart, so everybody can use the same chart. That way we all get the same results. That's what handy. Telling you how many wraps per inch is in the average yarn weight. Meaning, if you get a ruler, it's handy with a ruler. Otherwise, if you have like a pencil, it'll work, but then you still have to measure an inch on the pencil, so you might as well use a ruler. You take your ruler, you grab your yarn. This one is quite thick and bulky, but it's not quite as bulky as the purple. But they're both thicker than my worsted weight yarn, which is also here. And they're all thicker than my fingering weight yarn. I don't think I have a DK here. So, yarn is various thicknesses. They're all yarn. They all make pretty things, but you can't use them the same way, right? And you can't use the same hook size. And you have to know. Oops, I undid this. I'll fix it. I'll cut that out of the video. It's all good. And if you go on there, I can put the link in the description. What we got to do is we get our ruler. And on my ruler, it has inches and centimeters. But up here, like from 2 to 3, I'll start at one side of it. And you just wrap it. Wraps per inch. That's what you're counting. You don't want to wrap it so tight that you're like stretching the yarn and squishing it. It's like a contest. I'm going to see if I can get 50 wraps. Just try to do... the yarn is kind of about this puffy. I'll just lightly hold it on here. I'll start at one side of the inch thing and I go around. I will make sure that it is touching each other. Okay, so the yarn is all going to be starting at the 3 line and it's touching each other. So I can get about 4.5 width between the inches. 4.5, which means this counts as a 7 jumbo. If I managed to fit 5 in there, it would count as super bulky. According to this chart, 5 to 6 wraps is super bulky. This one is a 7, a jumbo, and I should put a little tag on there. If I had some scrap paper, I'm sure I've got paper somewhere, right? So I'm going to write on my paper, this is 7 jumbo. I'm just going to stick it in there. Now, if I ever lose the paper, I can just wrap per inch again, right? Not so hard. So now I move on to my next one, which is this purple. And it was a little bit thinner than the white one, but the same concept is going to apply. I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to start at one of the inch spots and I'm just going to wrap it. And I'm going to do it gently. So I'm not trying to it's not a contest to see if I can fit more in there, but I am going to make sure that it's all touching. It's filling up the space. It is filling up the full inch. This gets me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I couldn't really fit 7, so it says 6. Now the chart says if you get 6 to 9 wraps per inch, it's bulky, a 5. And if you get 5 to 6 wraps, it's a super bulky. How very helpful, because I've gotten 6 and now it can count as a 5 or a 6 weight. How useful. Because the 6 wraps per inch is more accurate than saying it's a bulky or a super bulky. Okay, I'm going to write on here that this is going to be 6 wraps per inch, which is a 5 or a 6 weight. Bulky or super bulky. And I'm just going to stick it with the yarn because I'm not ready to use it yet. I've got a couple other yarns here that I want to check. So you can also, sometimes I just stick it in here. As long as I get enough to fill up an inch, it doesn't have to wrap all the way around. You're just trying to see how many strings will fit in an inch. So I sort of stuck it in, and this one's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. Okay, so these are all the same weight, which is fabulous. They will work together because all of my stuff uses 2 yarns, right? And that will be my video for today. That now we know how to check wraps per inch. That tells you how thick the yarn is. Now that you know how many wraps per inch and you've given it a label of bulky or super bulky, if you go to their chart, it shows like this little picture with the little yarn ball with the number. There's that picture and the number. Then they give it a name that has at the top the yarn weight, bulky and super bulky. And you go down, down, down. It'll say recommended hook. Don't do the needle one because, well, I mean, maybe if you're knitting, it's helpful. I'm going to scroll down, down, down past a few rows to the recommended hook. And it says for bulky, a hook size should be 6.5 millimeters to 9 millimeters. And because that's also a range, again, you're going to want to take a guess. So if my bulky yarn was, they said bulky can be wraps per inch of 6 to 9 wraps per inch. And I only managed to fit 6 wraps per inch. So it's quite thick, which means I'm going to use the bigger yarn on, or the bigger hook on this list. So 9 millimeter hook. And then the next section says a 9 to 15 millimeter hook. So that's why if it's kind of in that super bulky. That first one I did, cream colored, wherever he went, he's probably going to be using 9 to 15 millimeter hook, probably 15, 12-ish, somewhere in there. But you can always adjust it if your tension is bigger, thicker, looser, tighter, that sort of thing. Okay, so in summation, what you got to do is measure how many times your yarn can wrap around something in the space of an inch. You count how many pieces of yarn fit in the inch. That tells you how many WPI, wraps per inch. You go to the chart, you say, okay, now this one has however many wraps and it equals this category. Then you go to the other chart and you say, now that I've looked at this category, I can say it should use a hook of, you know, sometimes they give a range. They're not very specific because you can have, even in the same category, some that are a little thicker and a little thinner. Based on that information, now you can take your hook, you can take your yarn, and you can make a gauge swatch. And if you find it's too stiff, you get a bigger hook. If you find, whoa, it's really like gappy and loose, get a smaller hook. If you have 2 yarns for my projects, as long as, you know, I can use these together now that I know they're the same, I can use these together for the next project. So I'm happy, you're happy. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment if you want. I don't know what you would say, like, thanks for showing me your yarn. Whatever you want. Thanks for coming. Bye, guys.